Raheem Sterling, he has over 80 caps for England, he's a multiple-time Premier League winner, but why does it seem like the football world just doesn't like him? So in this video, we're going to look back at Sterling's career and see how it's taken us to seeing him asked to leave Chelsea this past week. Just quick background with this past week. Chelsea boss Enzo Maresca left Raheem Sterling out of the matchday squad against Manchester City, saying it was technical reasons. In an interview with Maresca, he was asked, does he want to keep Raheem Sterling at the club? And he responded after a bit of a pause. He said, "I want Raheem Sterling," he began, "but I want all 30 players we have, but there's no space for all of them. So for some of them, they have to leave." Which this was on Sunday when he said this. So we're seeing it now at the end of the week that Raheem Sterling does want to leave Chelsea, and it's probably either an Italian team like Juventus or him going to the Saudi Pro League. But why does he seem like he doesn't have credit in the bank with the kind of footballing fans? I understand with Chelsea that I think he's the highest paid player, and he was the first signing under Todd Bowley. He was a Thomas Tuchel signing, which I think people forget that Thomas Tuchel left very early on in that year, and then Graham Potter came in, and it seemed like the plan had been readjusted from having these top players like Koulibaly, Raheem Sterling, and then moving towards the younger players, like them even bringing in Mykhailo Mudryk and then Madueke. But he didn't have a great season last year. His first season was fairly good. We can all agree it hasn't really worked out for either parties. And to be honest, I think we have to go back to Liverpool, where it all seemed to go downhill a bit for Sterling's reputation within the English football world, because obviously he won the Golden Boy at Liverpool, let's not forget that. He was fantastic. He was fantastic with Suarez and Sturridge and that young team that Rodgers had at the time. Although having a great career at Liverpool in his early days after being bought from QPR for about 500k, that his agent Aidy Ward pushed for a move so heavily out of Liverpool for essentially a better salary for Sterling. There was the famous quote that he said even if he was offered 900k a week, he wouldn't stay at Liverpool. I think we can all agree he probably would have stayed at Liverpool if he got offered that much, but he eventually moved to Manchester City, which at the time was seen as a money-grabbing move by Sterling. He was so young still, he had so much to learn, and also he was one of Liverpool's best players at the time because Suarez had left, so it was basically becoming not entirely Sterling's team, but he was definitely going to be one of the best players in the squad. And then he moved to Manchester City, which, especially Liverpool fans, he was seen as an absolute villain, because no one likes the players who move to, you could argue, a level team. Obviously Man City were a bit better than Liverpool at the time. Everyone goes back to Ashley Cole moving from Arsenal to Chelsea, and there's so many more like that. And it's funny because since years have gone by, Aidy Ward, his agent, has been called out so many times. There's actually a documentary about him and how he used to mistreat players. Raheem Sterling dropped him quite a few years back. It seems like, I mean, you look back in hindsight and you go, because I was like 14 at the time, I was like, I hate Sterling, he just is there for the money. But in reality, he was just a few years older than me, and he had someone in his ear basically going, get Liverpool to just let you go, and then you can go to Man City and you can get 200k a week. But the problem is with this at the time, the people who are in charge of the Daily Mail and all these rubbish tabloids, they are completely aware of the situation, yet they know it sells more and more papers to basically put Raheem Sterling's face all across the internet and say what a horrible person he is. And let's just call a spade a spade. He was a young black professional football player on a lot of money at the time who had disgruntled one of the biggest clubs in England. He had done nothing wrong in my opinion, looking back here. Absolutely nothing wrong, but he got hounded by the press. I'll put so many articles on the screen now. Every little single thing he did got scrutinised by the English tabloids. He is one of the most hounded players I've ever seen. I think Harry Maguire might be the most ridiculed footballer I've ever seen, but due to his footballing ability, and then it's been taken a bit too far. Raheem Sterling, it was completely off the field. People would argue his finishing wasn't too good at the time, or people would argue this and that, but it was him getting a gun tattoo on his leg, or him flying economy class to one of his holidays. And in reality, it was just ridiculous that unfortunately it just brainwashes the entire UK public about this certain player. And the fact that he's still around with some sort of sanity, I think that is such a big achievement that doesn't get anywhere the amount of recognition that it should do. And then you take it to Manchester City. Man City had Manuel Pellegrini at the time. They won the league the season prior. and Raheem Sterling thought he was basically coming into a lot of money and a lot of success. And I mean, he had one of the best strokes of luck when Pep Guardiola came a season after he joined and took over Manchester City, the best coach in the world, took over the richest team in basically football. And I do think Raheem Sterling is somewhat of a system player. I think he's fantastic individually, and I think he shows that for England constantly. I think you could argue, other than Harry Kane and some of the back line, he's been one of England's best players of the last, 5, 6, 7 years. But it's interesting to the fact that although he gets ridiculed for being a system player at Man City, he says anyone could play in that position and do well. I mean, when he was at Man City, he was one of the constants over so much change and change and change. I mean, let's face it, he had Leroy Sané, Nolito, Ferran Torres, he had Jack Grealish come in near at the end of his career. He had to fight with a young Phil Foden, he had to fight with Bernardo Silva sometimes. There's been so many players that have come into Man City when he was there, and it seemed like he always seemed to manage to start most of the games. And let's not forget, we're looking at 2018-19 season. He was in the PFA Team of the Year, he was the Young Player of the Year, and he was also the Football Writers Footballer of the Year. And people, let's calm down a bit, people were saying he was up for the Ballon d'Or. He made it 12th on the Ballon d'Or list that year, and in my opinion he should have been higher. I think he was excellent that season. He'd added goals to his game finally after it seemed like he just missed every single chance. If you're looking at those seasons, 2017-18, so before that year, 18 goals. 2018-19, 17 goals. 2019-20, 20 goals. So for those 3 seasons, he was one of the best goal scorers in the league. If you look at a player nowadays, look at Dom Solanke, for example. He had a great season at Bournemouth last year and scored so many goals for them, and he got a £65 million transfer to Spurs. He's seen as one of the most touted strikers in the Premier League. But Raheem Sterling, even when he was doing this, it didn't seem like he was at the top of everyone's lips talking about him, despite scoring so many goals. And I think this is 2 reasons. One, because he was in Man City, he was a system player, and anyone could have got on the back of those crosses, and it didn't count if he scored a goal, which is obviously ridiculous. And 2, I think it's maybe somewhat of like the Mo Salah treatment. He's not as good as Mo Salah, but when you watch Mo Salah, you kind of go, I don't get how he does so well sometimes. It looks like he can't control the ball, sometimes it looks like he can't pass a ball, and sometimes it looks like he can't finish to save his life. And I think that was to a lesser extent with Sterling. Sterling looks so clunky sometimes. I think dribbling wise, he was excellent at that. But finishing, he could not finish to save his life. I'm sure his conversion rate was absolutely awful at Man City. But once he left Man City and Jack Grealish came more into the fold, who had a pretty poor first season, and then the second season he was great within the system, but he didn't really add many numbers to his game. However, Raheem Sterling, I think they did miss his goal. Yes, they won the treble because they brought Erling Haaland in. It wasn't because Raheem Sterling had been holding them back. But I do think you could argue that Man City have never been as clinical as when Sterling was down that left side. Jeremy Doku is a brilliant player, but he doesn't have end product. Jack Grealish he's one of the most frustrating players because he's so good, and if he was in any other team, maybe he would have 15, 20 goals a season. But unfortunately, he's just succumbed to the way Pep wants to play him. But Sterling was brilliant at Man City, and I don't want to hear anything but that. He helped them win Premier League titles, and he was one of their best players over those years. And he went to Chelsea, and unfortunately, it just hasn't worked out well for him. He scored 6 goals in his first season, 8 goals in his second season, and obviously he hasn't played a game yet this Premier League calendar. But just to finish on the Chelsea point, I don't think you can judge any player for Chelsea. It's become a joke, and it's been in the media so much this summer. But Chelsea have a squad of 40, 50 players. Players were getting dressed outside the changing rooms in Cobham. They were getting dressed in the corridors, which it's mind-blowing. Raheem Sterling probably is used to his own name on his seat in the Etihad campus and everything like that. And then he goes into Chelsea where he probably doesn't know the name of all of his teammates. And that's not to excuse him. He has to take some responsibility. Like I said, I do think he's a system player. And with Chelsea, they don't have a system for Maresca. With that, you have to be brilliant individually, maybe like a Cole Palmer, to stand out. And you could argue, well, this has highlighted Sterling's flaws. Yeah, I'd probably agree to that. But also some players, they need to be in a system to flourish at the maximum of their capabilities. I think you could take a lot of top-class players, put them in that Chelsea team, and it wouldn't work out well for them. But to just finish on this, I think it is the media coverage of Sterling over the years that have just been ingrained in people's heads, and that he's been treated basically as a second-class citizen in football. He's always been treated as he's not good enough. He's always been treated as a bit of a cocky, bit of a flash lad. And I think when you take a step back, it doesn't seem like that at all. He just seems like quite a humble person who, I don't think he's been good enough at Chelsea, and he's going to leave for that. And I don't think that's really any issue. Chelsea are going to get him off the wages, and he's just going to get another opportunity elsewhere, where I hope he can get back into the England side, because in the 2021 Euros, he was excellent. He helped us get to that final. If we're being honest, we could have done with a prime Raheem Sterling in this year's Euro. But let me know what you think of this whole situation. Let me know what you think of Sterling, his career. Am I wrong? Is he overappreciated? Is he overrated? And if you could leave a like this video, like I say, comment, tell me what you think of it. And if you could subscribe, that'd be fantastic. But thanks for watching.